Level one is instant gratification, right? And so this is typically going to be with respect to hedonism and things like that, not necessarily just drug addicts in particular, but we all have a particular weakness to something. Maybe it's smoking, maybe it's drinking, maybe it's sex, etc. But typically, what instant gratification is going to do, it's usually physiological, right? It could be even as something as innocent as your favorite meal, but it's only ever a problem when you actually make it the biggest part of your life, right? Like when it occupies too much of your thoughts in the day, then it's like, "Ooh, maybe you have a problem." Because then you're allowing other aspects of your life to fall short, and maybe you're not maintaining the other areas where you should be maintaining them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
in the graph here for level one, we start off at our baseline. And so we have time on the X, happiness on the Y, and we have a pretty solid progression upwards, right? It's decently steep because whenever we look for instant gratification, usually we're very intentional. And so one instance I could think of where that usually is the case for pretty much everyone is looking for a porn video, right? Like you are in the zone, right? You are not thinking of anything else. Like you are focused, right? You're like, you got that flow state. Absolutely. And so when you have that kind of focus, that's why you're able to progress so quickly upwards and reach your peak in such a short amount of time relative to the other levels. And so here we're grinding our way up. Maybe that's the waiter coming down the aisle with our food. Maybe that's us rolling the joint. Maybe that's us actually finding that video that we want. And then the peak is obviously when we get that hit that we want. And so maybe that's an orgasm. Maybe that's actually getting high, or maybe that's getting your fix from a particular drink or something like that. When we have these, it's usually pretty instantly that we look for the next one, right? And so that's why there's such a steep drop off. It's because whenever we have that high and we instantly aren't in that state anymore, we just automatically look for the next one. And so if you notice, it's not a mistake, but we actually go even below the baseline whenever we actually
Mm.
come down from that high. And that's because then we're not necessarily just in the state of, ooh, maybe I should go grab it, or maybe I should go for it again, but we're actually, or rather, we've just lost it, right? And so we're actually just below the baseline because, like, oh, well, now I got to start over, or you're just thinking about the next one. And chances are it'll take a little longer. And so the slope is a bit less steep because then when we build up a tolerance to it, sort of like when you have a drug tolerance, then it'll take more of a dose to actually get that same effect, right? But nothing will ever be as good as your first one, right? Especially if you do
Right.
this sort of thing habitually. And so whenever we actually participate in this kind of happiness, you'll notice that the peaks for each high actually get lower, and it takes us a little bit longer to get there. And so overall, that just means that we're declining. And usually that's the case where people become drug addicts. Like that's a very easy example to use because then you see people trying to go for really high doses and it's usually never enough. And that's why their lives take such a steep decline, right? Because then they sell everything trying to get that first hit, even though they physiologically can't anymore. So overall, yeah, your peaks will get lower and lower and steeper, and that's usually where you find those kinds of people on the street, or where depression could very easily set in, or
Mm.
you know you overdose or you kill yourself or something like that. Because I mean, mind you, these are very extreme examples, but it's only ever a really big problem when you put all your eggs into level one or to level two, three, four, right? Because you could be in all four levels at once, right? Like just because you're pursuing something higher, like level three or four, it doesn't mean you don't actually get any satisfaction from anything else, right? Like I could certainly enjoy a drink. I could certainly enjoy drinking with you guys. It's
Mm.
just a matter of how we incorporate these things into our lives. And that's the main difference.